Hello, and welcome to the Vagabond Way podcast. The journey goes ever on with the long road. This episode, Going Wild in the Wilderness. Join us for another journey along the Vagabond Way as Steve Bonham takes us on a ramble through conjuring up lyrics and melodies for new songs. Kev Moore whisks us away to Mississippi USA for a taste of the blues, and the Bishop, that's me, I feed you some wacky nostalgia from the medicine cupboard of Dr. Big Love. The Vagabond Way podcast, featuring The Long Road, is exploring the world of the troubadour, the adventurer, the vagabond. The world isn't beige, it isn't processed, it's authentic, it's rich, and it's real. And if those are the sorts of sentiments that make your brain light up, then hop on board. We are embracing all of those things, we're celebrating all of that, and we'd love it if you joined us on the journey. Greetings, I am Chris the Bish Leiden. Thanks for joining us from wherever in the world you are. Lots of music to get through today as we feature an epic from our EP from last year, American Wilderness. So more on that in just a minute. Remember Steve Bonham, the vagabond philosopher, and Kev, the big man Moore, and now I do as well. We've each got our own curated Spotify playlist for you to enjoy. We're going to be updating them regularly, so you can be hearing new things every so often. Just look them up on Spotify and give them a like or a follow or whatever they're calling it this week. There'll be some songs you know, probably a bunch that you don't. Some well-known artists, some people you've probably never heard of. Hopefully a real mix of stuff. Some stuff we like, some stuff we're inspired by, stuff that's in the same kind of world as our music. So, go and have a dig around. There's 3 Spotify playlists to look out for. Steve's is simply called Anglo-Americana. Kev's is Anglo-Americana Moonshine Madness, and mine is Anglo-Americana Daydreaming. And last chance now, our song from the end of last year, Wrapped Up in You, is up for a UK Country Music Award 2020, presented by ukcountryradio.com, and we need you to vote. Before the end of June, so it's just a couple of days left now, and please go to ukcountrymusicawards.com/song to vote for Wrapped Up in You. It's in the list under Steve Bonham. So okay, on with the show. This week I'm taking a closer look at American Wilderness, the longest song we've ever created as a band. It's perhaps the longest song in all of Steve and my creative output over the years together. It's an epic song telling an epic, true story. I've talked on the podcast before about it being a ballad, a stylized story song, rather than the sort of more modern meaning of a like slow, soppy love song kind of thing. If you want to hear more about that stuff, go back and have a listen to episode 12 of this podcast, where I talk about that a bit more. The story of the song is about a woman called Paula Angel, who was convicted and sentenced to death for the murder of her lover. She was only 19 or 20 years old at the time, I think. She was the only woman to have been legally executed in New Mexico since it became part of the United States. And in fact, they had to have 2 goes at it because the first attempt didn't quite work out properly. A botched execution, a questionable legal process perhaps, a seemingly dodgy judge. It makes for quite the story. Real life sometimes really is stranger than fiction. Steve was keen to make a song worthy of the subject matter, and to have the time to actually tell all the little parts of it in the journey, and hence we get this epic. It's in 3 parts, sort of A-B-A structure. It's one of those songs that I think really sums up the Anglo-Americana feel for me. There's all kinds of influences in there, some subtle, some less so. There's sort of blues, jazz and rock, even a bit of sort of psychedelic pop in there, country, folk, all sorts. Sort of TV music, film music, there's loads of influences. So now, dear podcasters, you've come prepared. I can tell you're ready now. I can feel, you're sat there ready with your headphones on, eyes closed, sitting back, ready to relax. Just make sure you've got nothing to do for the next 9 minutes. And enjoy American Wilderness by Steve Bonham and The Long Road.
He was a Yankee soldier, brave, Mickle Martin was his name. Soldier in a uniform, the ladies he found fame. They say she was an angel fair, but one who fell so low. Each night as the sun went down to the old creek they would go. She loved him too and she night, till they heard the bugle call, the day began to light. One day she said, will you fly with me to a land so far away? He kissed her on her lovely hair and told her he would stay. Such decent songs are rambling on in the American wilderness. Such decent songs are rambling on in the American wilderness. It's true, I swear it's true, with you I'd love to roam. But I forget to mention my 5 kids left at home. Her eyes grew wide, her blood did race to a dagger from her dress. It seems that I must end the days of the one I love the best. She stabbed him once, she stabbed him twice, she stabbed him more than 8. He fell upon the weeping earth, she waited on her fate. And the bugle called and his brothers came, she kissed his life away. They dragged her to the courthouse to wait her judgment day. Such decent songs are rambling on in the American wilderness. Such decent songs are rambling on in the American wilderness. Benedict was a travelling judge with whiskey on his breath. He said, let's get this over with, for I bore myself to death. He said, most like you can appeal, but one stay your hanging day. Let's hear the next one on my list, I'd best be on my way. The jailer had a vicious mind, each morn she'd heard him say, gonna hang you till you're dead, 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 till then it's here you'll stay. What it was that grew such hate, I guess we'll never know. What is true was on that day he drove the car real slow. Such decent songs are rambling on in the American wilderness. Such decent songs are rambling on in the American wilderness. On the main street down in Vegas, they gathered such a crowd. To an angel on a coffin whose lovely head was bowed. But not all there to stand or stare, for the beat of life goes on. Tragedy is a moment's breath, for the cartwheels carry on. Down broken horses with sorrow on his mind. He's seen too many bad times to be the wanton kind. Silas stayed to knead the dough, wandered in his head. The killing of one so young, while another's baking bread. Saw the empty jail that stole away to sleep. Lily took another drink and memories to keep. And over in the dirt dull square, jailer he did smoke. He took a bow to those gathered there, then went about his work. Getting to the hanging tree, forgot to tie a well. So when the cart he drove away, into the earth she fell. Her hands were free to grasp the noose that tightened round her throat. The jailer pulled her round the waist, her ending to promote. The crowd grew chilled and said out loud, for God's sake let her be. This ain't how it's done round here, she's hanged so let her be. And so they cut her down round there, lady gasping on the ground. Some of them said the day was done, but one man turned them round. And with his tongue he stilled the crowd, and this is what he said. It wasn't just a hanging crime, but a hanging till she's dead. And so it was, the angel died, the town had moved along. The jailer took the story home, most felt he'd done her wrong. Such deeds and songs are rambling on in the American wilderness. Such deeds and songs are rambling on in the American wilderness. Such deeds and songs are rambling. I've been reading a book this week, Walking the Great North Line by Robert Twigger. Now, I've known Robert for a number of years. I think the first time we met was in Cairo, and he took me out into the desert with his very unreliable Toyota Land Cruiser. And we've stayed in contact and been friends ever since. I think probably one of the reasons is quite often our brains think in the same sorts of ways, though Robert's usually has the safety catch-off. Characterised, I suppose, by irrepressible curiosity, compulsive irreverence, and unabashed awkwardness. Walking the Great North Line is a great book. Rob noticed that the Stonehenge in Lindisfarne and dozens of other ancient sites lie almost perfectly on a northern line, more or less along the east-west watershed of England. And so walked from the start to the top. The trip was a true wild camp adventure, finding places to stop each night on or near the route, which in England is still legally dubious. And of course, any journey in this country is often extremely wet. Now, Rob is a tough dude, perhaps the toughest dude I've met. His CV includes chasing the world's longest snake, canoeing across Canada, studying Aikido with the Tokyo police. But he can also take feeling sorry for himself to high art, describing his poor wet feet as pink and wrinkled like a baby too long in the bath. This makes him a great vicarious travelling companion. But it is his unaffected, uninhibited curiosity that is the heart of his genius. His openness to the world and the hidden gems that lie waiting to be discovered, if you can but notice. He stopped en route at Thor's Cave, which is very close to where I live. This is a high cavern up in the Derbyshire Hills. People have slept in it for millennia, and now it seems Rob has himself, alone with the odd noises of the night and thoughts about child rearing, shamans and leadership. It's a wonderful book. Read it. It's up there on Amazon and all the usual places. Reading it reinforced my own sense that perambulation and rambling are at the heart of much good art, whether that's a book, a painting or a song. A chap called Frederick Gross, whose book The Philosophy of Walking, complains books by authors grafted to their chairs are heavy and indigestible like fattened geese. He imagines the physiological difference between a sitting down writer, cramped and stooped and doubled up, or a walker, upright, open to wide spaces, like a flower to the sun, open to a stream of unfettered, unbidden thoughts. Of course, this is something, me personally, I'm 100% on board with. I always struggle to write closed in a room, and most of my songs and writing, I guess, over the years has come from travel and walking and keeping a notebook of the trail, which becomes my source material when I'm back home. But I was thinking the other day too how good walking is for problem solving in this respect. It's not just a source of ideas, it's a way of dealing with things. Back in the days of my previous band, Dr. Big Love, Chris and Tim used to send me recordings of stuff they'd been working on, which usually came in the form of a bass part and keyboards, no melody, sometimes with some electronic drumming, and not necessarily in a obvious structure that could say, here comes the verse, or that must have been the chorus as it passes you by. At first I was quite intimidated by these things, and there were several of them. And eventually I found the solution was to put them on my iPod and head up with my big old Labrador Charlie and walk the fields, listening, and just listening and listening and listening. And sometimes I would keep this process going for maybe a couple of weeks, taking a dog and heading out for an hour or two. And always, eventually, things would fall into place. Things would become obvious. Then I had to record the melody into my phone and try to remember it, and still somewhere there will be some mad recordings of me hollering away in a wind or something, or by a passing tractor, which would be the start of some songs we then go on to record. A couple of those come to mind, and perhaps we'll play one of them. One was Lemon Street, which really just was a riffing chord progression. And then, even more strangely, was Tears After Dark, which originally was called, from Tim, Sitting Bull Had His Reservations. Quite pleased with both songs.
So Steve gave me the choice this week between two fairly crazy songs back from our Dr. Big Love days, Lemon Street and Tears After Dark. Now, actually, I had to dig back into the archives on the computer to uncover the sound files for these ones. I don't think they're up on Spotify still. They were up until relatively recently. You'd still get the occasional message from somebody in some far-flung place saying, "Oh, I really like that song from the album it's from was called The Naked Juggler." Maybe we should try and get them up again. People can listen to them. Anyway, so I've decided to play Tears After Dark, which I hadn't listened to for many, many years, I don't think. I'd forgotten just how nuts it is. The cast list for this particularly bonkers show is quite extensive. So special shout-outs and thanks for the memories to Ben Adcock on drums, Tim Gadsby on bass, Sammy Carter on vocals, the Big Love Brass section, Dave Greenland and Dave Burgess on trumpet and flugel. As of right now, I can't remember exactly who played which on what, but they were our trumpet section. And Chris Birch on trombone. And a special place in my heart will forever go to Lucy Jane Carter for playing milk bottles on the one occasion we managed to mount the album this came from live way back when. All will become clear in just a moment. So, brace yourselves. Here comes Tears After Dark.
There's a bar in Old York where the broken-hearted talk, seeking some redemption from the sorrow and the tension that comes from breaking into. It's nostalgic contemplation leads to this assignation, to trading hard luck stories about the passion and the glory and the things that he do. And now there's tears after dark, there's Venus and Mars adrifting apart. Oh sweet Lord, it's happened again, between now and then. She broke his heart. Everyone is breaking it and everyone is faking it, looking for a saviour in this strange behaviour. Hey, hey, it comes to pass. Something better, like the moment that you met her in the ashtrays and the litter. A taste of something bitter you find in a half-empty glass. And now there's tears after dawn, there's Venus and Mars adrifting apart. Oh sweet Lord, it's happened again, between now and then. Little princess in a china cocktail dress, eyes without mascara, whisper, see a sayonara, talk her home after the dance. But he's too busy thinking this life of mine is stinking. A girl in old Japan left with another man and goodbye, no second chance. Tremble when he kissed her, wrapped her legs around him. Later she confounded when she quit this moment of bliss. With Arnie oscillator, who eventually betrayed her, lying in dark places with a sea of friendly faces who believe it could happen like this. And now there's tears after dawn, there's Venus and Mars adrifting apart. Oh sweet Lord, it's happened again, between now and then. He broke her heart.
Hello everybody again and welcome to Kev's Cafe Corner. This week, we're heading back over to the States and specifically the epicenter of the blues, arguably, Clarksdale, Mississippi. Now, Clarksdale's figured large in the history of the blues, not least because it's where the legendary Crossroads is, where Robert Johnson allegedly sold his soul to the devil in order to play guitar better. And it's also where Bessie Smith passed away. And it is also home of Ground Zero Blues Club, which is owned by Morgan Freeman. And I was in Clarksdale back in 2010. And of course, it was impossible to spend any time there and not visit Ground Zero, which I did. And what a fantastic blues cafe that is. The food, the chicken wings are to die for. Highly recommended. Great fare they have on there. And great coffee and great drinks. And it's just a superb place to eat and drink. But of course, above all, it's a superb place to hear live, living, breathing blues music. And on the night I was there was a local blues player there, a guy called David Dunavant, and he was there with his trio. Superb they were. And I had the honour and pleasure of being able to get up and play with the guys. And for me, that was a huge moment to be able to stand on stage at Ground Zero and play some blues with these guys in Clarksdale, Mississippi, something I'll never forget. And the song we jammed that night was an old thing called Spinning Wheel Blues, the first version of which I ever owned was by Status Quo. And it was just great fun to play. And this very afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, the paint is still wet on it. I chucked a little version together for you so you can have a listen. So yeah, if you're ever down Mississippi Way, get yourself to Clarksdale. There's many things to see there, and pay a visit to Morgan's Club, Ground Zero. This is Spinning Wheel Blues.
Well, the spinning wheel blues have got me packing my bags and going. I said the spinning wheel blues have got me packing my bags and going. I said I had to leave my motel, they don't want me no more. I went high on that lonesome hill. I went high on that lonesome hill. I said I had to leave a hotel, I couldn't pay my bill. Say what? That's right.
So there you go, just a taster of Spinning Wheel Blues to try and conjure up the atmosphere that I was experiencing down in Ground Zero back in 2010. Probably haven't quite captured it, but you get the idea. And who knows where we'll be next week, listeners. Could be anywhere. Hope you've enjoyed yourselves and see you next week.
So I think technically last week's Bishop Daily Bread was what they call a cliffhanger. So I'm thrilled this week to be able to resolve your tension. You may breathe again, dear listeners, for the news is good. Nay, the news is triumphant. After 26 hours of Not really doing much, but that's the way you make croissant. The croissants were made, and my oh my, they were good. Flaky, crispy, soft, buttery, just delicious. Exactly as I'd hoped, really. I mean, although the 26 hours were mostly waiting around, there were those sort of finicky bits where you've got to actually do some stuff, and some bits were a bit repetitive or time-consuming or a bit sort of just frustrating. But you know what? Sometimes the fruits of your labour are worth it, and I would say so in this case. I've got 8 croissants ready to bake in the freezer as well, so that's a bonus. All the effort, and I've got those ready to go. The dough was enough to make 16, so I'm really very pleased with how they came out. If you've got the time and the inclination, I would say, same with the Big Macs from last week, I would say go for it. As a treat, they ticked all the right boxes. I cannot picture myself going to that effort every week, but, every so often as a treat, great. A confession now, I did accidentally, the very next day, I accidentally made a batch of real donuts. I'd never made them before. It was a first-time offence, Your Honour. Now, I'm talking about what I call proper donuts, things with yeast in them. Dough buns that you have to let rise and then you deep fry them. And, plenty of people, occasionally me, I would be content with a ring donut made with baking powder rather than yeast and baked in an oven. But for me, they're not the same as the soft, doughy, little bit chewy donuts that are deep fried. I made what I hoped was going to be a small batch, only 6. And that worked out. I think any less than that, and actually the making of the dough would be quite tricky. Simple enough recipe, very wet dough, disturbingly wet, and perhaps on this occasion a little actually too wet. But the results were pretty great again. Some hilarious air bubbles did appear that, what's the word, I don't know, bloomed in the hot oil. A couple of the donuts were of an irregular shape, let's put it that way. But they tasted great still. This batch, just dusted in caster sugar, no filling. I did order a special donut filling piping tip from Amazon the very next day, so the next time I accidentally decide to make a batch of donuts, I can fill them with some raspberry jam and go on a full-on nostalgia fest. Waistline be damned. That's it for this week. Thanks for listening, you lovely lot. Subscribe to the podcast. Remember, we're on Apple Podcasts or SoundCloud, Spotify. The next episode will be out next week, Friday the 3rd of July, 2020. How the hell did it get to be July? Let us know what you think. Find us on social media. We are The Vagabond Way or Steve Bonham on the Long Road on Facebook, and that's our main social media channel. Check out our YouTube channel, youtube.com/The Vagabond Way. If you use Spotify, please follow us on Spotify, Steve Bonham on the Long Road, as it really helps us register in the big Spotify playlist machine. We're on Patreon as well, at patreon.com/thevagabondway. Patreon is a great platform that makes it super easy for anyone out there, to support content that you love on a monthly basis. It gives you direct access to the people creating the stuff you love, us, hopefully, and you get to play an integral part in shaping the direction of the things that we make. So, become a vagabonder. That's our name for our supporters on Patreon, to help us create music, live performances, books and short stories, this weekly podcast, and some other things we are cooking up. As a vagabonder, you can get the recordings and books we make for free, receive exclusive Patreon-only merchandise in the post, get regular behind-the-scenes updates from us, unlock access to exclusive live-stream performances and Q&As, and lots more. You can help us create something different, something that entertains, and something that inspires others. So, join us on the journey and release the vagabond within. Patreon.com/thevagabondway. Thank you once again, brave adventurers, vagabonds and explorers, for joining us on the Vagabond Way. Remember, the world isn't beige, it's authentic, it's rich and it's real. Embrace every last bit of it. Until next time, the journey goes ever on with The Long Road. Bye for now.